Hello, welcome back to the channel. And as the January transfer window approaches, today we are going to discuss all of the potential incomings and outgoings at Watford Football Club. Okay, we'll start with outgoing players, and I have a long list on my phone in front of me here actually, so I'll whiz through them as quickly as possible. Starting at left back with Caleb Wiley, and this is a major frustration for me because Caleb is clearly a very talented player and has a lot of potential to be maybe a superstar in the future. There's a reason Chelsea signed him in the Premier League, and actually even going back to last season, Mauricio Pochettino came to Vicarage Road. I saw him in the upper Graham Taylor stand. Actually, he come to watch Caleb in person, and I think that says a lot actually about how highly he's thought of, not only at Watford, Chelsea, but also within the men's USA national team ranks as well. Mauricio is of course taking charge of them during the FIFA World Cup next summer. And yeah, I'm sure Caleb has aspirations to break into the national team setup. Unfortunately, this season, for whatever reason, he's just not been able to get back up to fitness. I'd love the chance to speak to one of the Watford physios who are working with Caleb in the gym, just to kind of know, more in depth as to what the issue is. We've been told it's some sort of some back issue with Caleb. We don't really know any more details than that, and it reminds me actually of the Courtney House situation that we had a few seasons ago. He was another defensive player on loan from Aston Villa. He made a few appearances for us. He looked really promising. And then he kind of just disappeared with his injury and we never saw him again. So I think for me, if I was Juan Lukanani or Valon Barami heading into the new year and the transfer window, number one, my first job would be to send Caleb back to Chelsea. If he can't play at Watford, there's no point him being here. So if that option is available, I would send him back. And number two, I would definitely look to bring in either another loanee left back or a permanent left back in that position to compete with Mark Boller. I think Boller has clearly been fantastic for us this season, but it's clearly going to put a massive strain on his body to be playing week in, week out with no rest and no backup to compete with him as well. So I'd send Caleb back to Chelsea, and if I was Watford, I'd look to bring in another body in that position. Okay, next up are two players, both called Mendy. Foremost Mendy and Papa Mendy. Of course, Foremost Mendy was brought in allegedly as our number one centre-back target. That was the narrative portrayed to the media by the club. He's barely seen a minute this season. I think his only appearance come under Paolo Pezzolano away at Millwall, and look how that turned out. Of course, he was playing at right wing back in that game, which isn't his natural position, and we haven't really seen him since then. He was on the bench against Stoke City. He didn't come on and make an appearance. And Pat Mendy as well, a very experienced defensive midfielder. Yes, he saw a few minutes against Stoke City, but before that, I think his last appearance was against Oxford, again under Paolo Pezzolano. So I think for me, both Mendys, there's certainly a high chance they could both leave in the January transfer window, especially I think non-Police Mendy in midfield. He's a very experienced pro. He left France, I think, in the summer, formerly of Leicester City as well. He would have come to Watford wanting to play football towards the end of his career, and for the large majority of this season, he's just been sat on the bench or excluded from the squad entirely. So definitely for me, I think there's a high chance and high probability that they both leave as well in the January transfer window. Would you want to see that happen? Let me know in the comments down below. Okay, the next player we are going to discuss is a certain Belgian midfielder, Pierre Duomo. Now, I really like Pierre. I think he's a real great asset for Watford and certainly had the potential to be a real star for us in the future. Unfortunately, it seems to have gone very wrong very quickly. I don't know what has happened behind the scenes, but clearly he's not favoured by Javi Gracia. He prefers other options like Kayembe, Sissoko, even non-Police Mendy has seen more minutes than Pierre Duomo this season, which is certainly saying something. And I've been following this story quite closely. I've reported a few times on the Watford Way about some clubs looking at him. He played a match for the under-21s a few weeks ago, and I was told scouts from Norwich City and Sheffield Wednesday were there in attendance to watch him. We were also told that Galatasaray and representatives from that club had also spoken to Pierre very recently as well over a potential move to Turkey. So I think it's very clear that Pierre doesn't have a future at Watford, and I'm really intrigued actually as to how this will develop over the coming days and weeks. Where will he end up? Will he stay in England? Will he move abroad? And ultimately, will Watford live to regret that? Because, as I said, I think he's a fantastic box-to-box midfielder. He can contribute both defensively and offensively. He's been training at a really high level and playing at a really high level as well with the under-21. So Pierre Duomo definitely on his way out. Where that will be, we yet to know. But yeah, I think Watford will come to regret selling him in a few years actually. So Pierre Duomo on his way out in January, unfortunately. Jeremy Petry is another player who I believe was brought in specifically for Paolo Pezzolano and the way he wanted to play. You have to remember, under PP, the wing-backs were very, very high, very dynamic, aggressive. They had to get up and down all game, and it was a very demanding role in that position under Paolo Pezzolano. And I think Jeremy Petry fitted that bill perfectly. And whenever I saw him play for Watford, he looked really exciting, especially going forward. Physically, he was a really good profile. The way he carried and dribbled the ball as well was really good. And I just think under Javi, again, it's purely player preference and him preferring a more defensive option in Jeremy Ngakia. So if Petry doesn't feature at all over the festive period and into the new year, again, that's another player I could see leaving the club. And finally, for outgoings, James Morris. He's not really been mentioned at all by any Watford fans this season. I think the only reason he's still around really is to help fill that homegrown quota that is mandated by the EFL. You would have noticed that James Morris has been on the bench quite a few times this season, but has really not made any appearances at all. And from my understanding and from what I know about the rules, that is purely because you have to have a certain number of homegrown players on the bench to fulfill kind of the EFL regulations on a match day. So James Morris clearly isn't a serious option in that left back position. Personally, I think his footballing level is probably kind of mid to top end of League One, which is perfectly fine. He's far better at football than I ever will be. But yeah, I don't think he has a serious future at Watford. So James Morris is certainly someone else I could see leaving in the next few weeks. Okay, on to incomings now. And I'm afraid to say I don't have too much to bring you or talk about today. Of course, there's the usual rumours around a certain Nigerian striker, Emmanuel Dennis. Would I like to see him return? I'm going to put it out there very early. Personally, I do not want this to happen. We, of course, had very strong rumours. It was close to happening in the summer. It didn't materialise in the end. And I can kind of understand why Watford brought him back for the second time under Tom Cleverley. I think we needed a little bit of extra firepower, and you could argue it worked out really well. Whilst he didn't set the world alight, he did score a really crucial goal away at Birmingham City to drag Watford out of a potential relegation battle last season. But to bring him back for a third time, for me, screams desperation and poor recruitment, actually. I think Watford can do a lot better in the striker department than bringing Dennis back for a third time. So, yeah, I'd love to hear your thoughts on Dennis specifically, actually, in the comments below. If the option was available to you, would you bring him back? Do let me know. And the only other, minor rumour we've had actually came last night. I was scrolling on my phone before bed, and there was a link to an Italian midfielder, Edoardo Bova. He's a player looking to relaunch his career following illness. Watford have reportedly expressed an interest in him recently too. You may know him from an incident that happened just over a year ago. He collapsed on the pitch during a Serie A match. It was feared that he may have lost his life. It was a similar incident, if you remember, to Christian Eriksen. Thankfully, he pulled through and he seems to be back to fitness and ready to kind of relaunch his football career. So Edoardo Bova potentially coming to Watford. Who knows? It's a very minor link from a radio station in Roma, Italy, but that did come up on my phone last night and I thought I would mention it today. Other than Dennis and Bova, though, there's not really been too much talk about incomings this window. I think when you look at the Watford squad, whilst there's a lot of players not favoured by Javi Gracia, it is a very large team. There's 25, 26, maybe even 27 players available to Javi. And yeah, to add to that further, I don't think financially would be a very sensible decision. So I do think we may see people come in, but before that happens, we'll have to see players leave too. And as we just discussed, there's plenty of players who may leave Watford in the next few weeks. So it's going to be really exciting. We'll keep you covered here on the Watford Way. Don't forget to follow us across all our social platforms as well. We're of course here on YouTube. If you want the latest and breaking up-to-date news, you can follow us on X, formerly Twitter, Instagram, Facebook and TikTok as well. We're across all socials at the Watford Way. Very easy to find. And yeah, the transfer windows are always my favourite times of year. So yeah, really looking forward to it. Hopefully it's exciting. And yeah, maybe a couple of new signings as well. Who knows? Let me know your thoughts and everything I discussed in the comments down below. And I'll see you again very soon. Bye-bye.